Welcome to Slash Forward. In this video, we're going in hard and assessing the odds of surviving a run-in with The Collector from the movie The Collector. Hit the like button to support your local entomology association. To start, I'll unpack the storyline to see what we can learn. Let's get to it. We open on a nice little suburban house undergoing some major landscaping renovations. Its tipsy owners pop in to blow off the excitement of the evening's successful socializing, but they find the power to be out, and Larry is frantically summoned upstairs to investigate a mysterious shaking box, which he opens without hesitation and pays dearly for. We then transition to quieter, calmer environs, filled with natural beauty and fields of wildflowers, and find a variety of contractors descending upon this old colonial fixer-upper. Here we meet Arkin, a handyman with a heart of gold, who is tasked with installing the window bars on the lower level to accentuate the owner's desire for a Victorian prison aesthetic. As he stares longingly at the family photos and owner's business cards, he receives a jump scare from a straight-up mermaid who invites him to a tea party. Despite his full social calendar, he partakes and uses this time to ask Jill about the ideal gift for a young mermaid about her age. Then he goes to shoo away a spider and is caught in a moment of unintentional familiarity, causing Michael to raise his hackles. So Arkin tries to show that it's all good by immediately submitting to him and leaving the family to their state-of-the-art security. Outside, he finds himself in a tense standoff with some wasps and utilizes the one apparent health benefit of smoking. He then politely notifies the exterminator on his way home from the job site. Before he goes, he runs across the eldest daughter, Hannah, who tests out her feminine wiles on him and then tells him to prepare for a blowout. Afterwards, she sneaks back into the house to instigate an argument with her mom about her desire to sit out their impending family vacay. Then Michael gives Arkin his pay and says farewell for a couple of weeks while the family is gone. We then find Arkin dropping in on his daughter at the alley, where he gifts her the hip Teddy Ruxpin recommendation he got from Jill. This pisses his ex Lisa right the hell off because she needs money, not things. You can't take care of children with toys, and she can't pay off her bookies with his weak-ass paycheck. So she sees no viable option at this point but to pack up and get the hell out of town. Arkin, however, has something in the hopper and he vows to get her the money she needs by midnight so he can save his family and keep his daughter close. He immediately calls the boys to let him know the heat is on. Then he visits the club to meet up with Big Roy, who's eager to show off his new town car. They've been casing the Chase household for some time now, and Roy's rightfully hesitant about changing the timeline they had set in place. This is when mistakes are made, you see, but since Arkin is in desperate need of immediate funds, and they have a codependent relationship, he doesn't have much choice but to go along with it. Arkin then rolls up with the fog and sneaks up to the house in his bandit's uniform, where he finds the first major change to his expectations. He gets down to business, making quick work of the front door lock, and then steps in to find the security system disengaged. So that's a win. He heads straight up to the wall safe and gets to hooking up all his code-breaking tech, then turns the dial slowly until he hears each tumbler drop. He's distracted from this, however, when he hears the sound of a second person entering the house. He quickly packs up and tucks away where the two cat burglars have a brief listening standoff before Arkin slips back downstairs, only to find the back door now sporting a new quartet of specialty deadbolts. Recognizing that he's low on time and options, and then hearing the mystery man head into the basement, he opts to dart back upstairs to get what he came for. But he can't do the job without quiet concentration, and sounds of torture begin wafting up from the basement. Mr. Chase then stumbles into the room thinking Arkin is a party to his misfortune, and he goes to grab his 9-iron. It sets off a tripwire that initiates a trap that snags and drags Michael down the hallway, suspending him momentarily before dropping him to the floor below. We then pull back a level as Arkin begins to recognize that the house is set up in a different configuration from normal. Being a man of action, Arkin goes for the phone, which causes a little tickle on his eardrum, and then heads for the windows, which are similarly set up to repulse any escape. The end result? A partial degloving when he goes to extricate his hand from the contraption. Arkin now knows to proceed slowly and carefully, noticing nasty little surprises all over. While the collector searches for the other person he suspects is in the house, Arkin tries to find a safe way out, and is taunted along the way by sharpies he can't touch and cobwebs of razor wire. As he Mission Impossibles his way around, we recognize that he previously navigated the house without injury through sheer luck. Looking for a break from finding and avoiding traps, he decides to seek the safety of the torture basement. Here he finds Mr. Chase alive and screaming. He lets Arkin know that his wife Victoria is in the next room and that he has a gun in his bedroom safe. He then helpfully provides the combo. 24/7. 24/7, just like his grind, yo. Arkin vows to help get him out of there to keep him calm. He then checks in on Victoria, who is not well. She has an eye patch that he can't remove right now. She lets him know that Jill is gone, but she presumes Hannah is hiding in the house somewhere. He convinces her to lay down a distraction by screaming so he can get back upstairs. She does what he says, and true to his prediction, the collector doesn't hurt her. He does, however, ponder the thought of working over Michael, which he ultimately chooses to do, and with gusto. Upstairs, Arkin opens the safe and retrieves the large raw gemstone he came for. Dang, he could make about 50 birthstone pendants with that thing. He stuffs it into his cargo pocket, which is really gonna hurt later if he lands on it. Then he gets the gun but finds there are no bullets available. While searching, he hears a noise from the closet and uncovers a blind box of epic proportions. Inside of it, he finds the Lairster from the opening, who tells him to get the hell out. He warns that their host kills those that he doesn't want and collects the others, which you don't want, and then uses some of them like Larry here as bait. Heeding this advice, he crams Larry back into the box and rushes off, only too quickly as he soon finds himself in a sticky mess. His attempt to navigate the bedroom requires him to take certain actions that alert the collector to his presence. However, he is able to cover his tracks. The collector arrives and presumes a house cat to be the culprit, while Arkin pulls off a 6-year-old classic, thus avoiding detection. When the coast is clear, he carefully navigates his way out, grabbing a couple paper clips along the way. In the basement, he finds the fruits of the collector's labors as Michael hangs there, eviscerated. He pushes past this and works to release Victoria with the paper clips, warning her to keep her eyes averted as they make their way through the adjacent room. Unfortunately, the second she steps on something squishy, she breaks the one rule, freaks out, and runs. When she hits the top of the stairwell, she's greeted by the collector and violently stabbed. He then takes a quiet moment to tenderly release a spider into the wild, showing his soft side, before dragging Victoria back to the tub for preparation. The house is then enveloped in sound as he records Victoria's screams while stitching up her mouth, preventing him from hearing Arkin try to break out of the upstairs window. Then a huge storm rolls in that prevents Hannah from hearing Arkin's warnings as she rolls up with her forbidden date. She finds the front door locked to no longer work, and assuming it's just her petty mother teaching her a lesson, she thinks little of it. They head around to the back door where they're let in by the collector. They get playful and narrowly avoid a couple of traps, as the collector watches in sticky anticipation until he's discovered, which is exactly what he likes, so no big deal at all. Chad takes swift action but suffers the failure of bringing a fist to a knife fight and ends up falling backwards and getting absolutely wrecked by a room full of bear traps, which incidentally ends up being much less funny than cartoons would have led us to believe. Hannah manages to dial 911 but is dragged off. Arkin runs upstairs to break away some of the boards on the windows and sets off an alarm that allows him to circle back and release Hannah from her barbed wire restraints. Due to the confusing nature of what's happening and his inexplicable presence in her house, Hannah resists his help and attempts to arm herself with the scissors. However, tugging upon them results in her getting flung bodily into the projector screen. Feeling like he's really coming out of his rescue attempts empty-handed, Arkin goes to see if he can retrieve Larry, but he discovers that Larry and Box are synergizing pretty hard, so he leaves him and busts through the window, performing a perfect tuck and roll to the yard outside, only to discover that Jill's been upstairs the whole time. Oh, she's small enough to avoid most of the traps as the collector attempts to collect her, and then Arkin steps in and escorts her to her room. Here he tries setting up a booby trap of his own involving a fish tank and a tube television, but the collector is wily and this isn't his first rodeo, so he easily avoids it and starts chucking knives at them as they run into the next room, where Jill slips away into the laundry chute as their pursuer disrespectfully uses Larry's head to break down the door. When he does, they engage in hand-to-hand combat. During the struggle, Arkin manages to unmask his attacker for a brief moment of satisfaction before he gets knocked the F out. We then find them back in the basement where it's revealed that the collector's fishhook budget is nearly unlimited, and he kindly wakes Arkin up from his slumber with a delicate slice across his face. Once he sees his quarry is conscious, he starts in with a little tippity-tap on his teeth. As we learn, he's also an enthusiast of hobby dentistry. Jill makes a noise that attracts his attention, resulting in Arkin trying desperately to bring the attention back to him. He finds homophobic slurs to be the most effective tool in his toolbox here, and right as this thing's about to turn into an episode of Fear Factor, the police finally roll up. The officer sees Chad's body in the dining room and it puts him on high alert. Unfortunately, this causes him to tunnel hard on the collector when he appears, completely missing his faithful doggo, who greedily rips out his jugular to slurp up all of his delicious inner fluids. And while he works on this, Arkin is working through the delicious pain required to earn his freedom. After completing this, they manage to scurry up the laundry chute just ahead of the dog and snuff his face into a flaming trash can. He then uses the dog to initiate a confrontation with his adversary, in which, despite his tenderized hands, he manages to come out on top and send this prick back into the basement. This gives him a little time and space to think up a good trick to end things, and sure enough, when the collector emerges, they distract him, Shakma style, and ensnare him in one of his own traps. And that is irony. They run out of there as fast as they can, and try to get ahead of the line of police that are tearing down the road toward them. Arkin discovers that a hitchhiker-style flag down would have been ideal here, but eventually they get themselves all boxed up safe and sound as the house gets blown. Arkin even identifies the exterminator as the culprit before leaving, tying off that loose end, and with it also just before midnight, he has a chance to actually pull this off. But his relentless pursuer catches up with him, and being a man used to getting what he wants, indelicately crams him into his box before driving off into the night. With that now established, let's get to the question of whether you could survive this ordeal. We're gonna have to take this as somewhat at face value, in terms of considering your odds based on the assumption you've already found yourself inside a house of horrors, because we're missing a key piece of information in that we never see the collector actually collect his victims. So we can't really say what steps might be involved in avoiding ensnarement. For the intended victims, obviously Arkin has the choice to decline being a cat burglar, and if he hadn't been encumbered by such a strong drive to get Lisa out of her gambling debt to ensure he could keep them around to assuage the guilt of his fatherly absenteeism, he would only be hearing about the fate of the Chase family on the nightly news. But based on that assumption, it seems like if you were inclined to stay alert and aware of your surroundings, proceed cautiously, and keep your head on a swivel, it is possible to make it out, but not very probable, so I'd have to put the survival odds at approximately 18.5%. And that's in consideration of the average person, of course. You, however, are obviously exceptional. I'm sure you'd be fine. Realistically, if you want to win in this scenario, Arkin had the generally correct idea, he just implemented it too timidly. First off, when I saw his lockpicking kit, I assumed it likely from my own experiences as a cat burglar that we would find a pair of wire cutters therein. Sure enough, he whips them out later to handle the barbed wire on Hannah. While the collector's tricks and traps are interesting, elegant, and varied, they also seem to be overly complicated in some ways and rely a great deal on pulleys and piano wire. A good pair of wire cutters would really render a majority of these things completely impotent. This and the fact that most of the useful items in the house are made unreliable by booby traps also speaks to the wisdom of committing to carrying a knife on your person at all times. If you have that covered, everything else is simply a matter of time and opportunity. The collector seems to be a formidable foe in terms of the martial arts, so taking him on directly is really a matter of necessity and consideration for your physical condition. If you've been injured or weakened in any way, it's probably best to avoid him, especially since, aside from being an obvious master of Tai Chi, he also seems to be more than happy to find soft places on your body to insert his knives. Once you've made the decision to escape and are alone upstairs, the power of positive thinking will bring you through. It's likely disheartening to get your hand snapped up in a razor blade trap, for instance, but I find it hard to believe that whatever spring counterweight mechanism he had set up for this had been repeated on all the upstairs windows. By refusing to let the fact that you're stuck in some sicko's torturous wet dream cause you to recede inward, you can begin testing and confirming the safest point of egress and work your way out from there. Being very careful, of course, to make sure you time any loud noises with the shrieks of pain and agony emanating from downstairs. This will be hard to overlook, but in an emergency, you have to take care of yourself first to put yourself in a position to help others. Hindsight is powerful for us here, but at the time, he didn't really do much saving on his own by running the gauntlet multiple times. You just have to push past your emotions here to ensure you can take advantage of your faculties for rational decision-making in order to leave the screams of your fellow victims behind you. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my donors memorialized in the Hall of Headshots. And as an FYI, I have a website set up where you can support the channel through donations or merch. Any donation unlocks uncensored movie reviews of Life Force and Under the Skin, with others to be added over time. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.